Greetings to one and all, it's your old buddy Jay here, coming at you with another Countermeasures game changer. Now this week I have decided to go back to a game that I have always had a big space for in my heart, and that is a game called Limbo. Now I know that I usually do reviews of more recent games. A couple of weeks ago I did one on Hotline Miami, which seemed to have gone down quite well, so I thought, well, there's a few others that I'd quite like to talk about that I either A, haven't tried, or B, haven't played in a long time. Now Limbo I originally played when it came out on the Xbox. It was out on the Xbox Live Arcade back in 2010, I believe. And yeah, it's just a really simplistic and creative game that has sort of stuck in my mind really, and I just thought I'd have a little chat about it today. So the developer of this game is called Playdead. Now those guys, like I said, originally brought it out on the 360, and then it's later come to, I think it's on Switch now, and the PlayStation, and Microsoft, etc, etc. It is a 2D side-scrolling game, which has some very interesting physics within it. It's a very stylized game, so as you can see here, you are essentially, the whole game is set in black and white, which is a very bold, creative choice if you are creating a game, because the temptation is to go all bells and whistles with the explosions and the bangs, but in this case they've gone, they opted for a very simplistic, almost childlike look to the game, which I think is incredibly successful and leans very much into the kind of very dark tone that this game has, but I'll talk about that shortly. So the director for this is a chap called Arndt Jensen, and the designer is a guy called I'm going to say this wrong, I'm terrible with names, Jeppe Carlson. Sorry Jeppe, I definitely said that wrong. I'm looking at your name here and I couldn't tell you how to say it properly. But either way, the collaboration of these two guys, along with many other programmers, one being Thomas Krog, have put together a very interesting and unique game here. Now, like I said, the game came out over a decade ago, so I thought for this review what I would do is I would go back and I would play it, having not played it for 10 years, and it still stands up on a multitude of levels. Like some games you go back to after a long time of not playing, and you have fairly fond memories of them, and then when you actually start playing them you think, this doesn't feel right now, because games have moved on so much, and maybe the physics have developed in such a way that that you go back to those older games and you really notice the difference. Whereas with this game I actually felt that I just fell straight back into the kind of the feel of how the character moves and how the character interacts. And so I think in that respect, the design and the creation of the physics engine that this runs on, and the amount of time that they've spent in making this sort of small 2D character feel connected to the world, they've done a really great job with it. So you are a little bit of the plot is that basically you're this little boy who wakes up in a forest, and I believe you're looking for your sister. I don't think it's your girlfriend, I think you're looking for your sister, and the game itself is only sort of 2 or 3 hours long from start to finish, so it's not really a very long game. I would absolutely recommend that you try it if you haven't ever played it. I feel that a lot of people have played this game already, and there have been a lot of people who have reviewed this game already. I feel like I'm, with this one, I feel like I'm the last person reviewing it rather than the first one, so the last one to the party, if you like, which I don't mind at all, because I do want to talk about the style of the game. So the style is it's 2D. It obviously has a certain amount of the parallax scrolling going on, with the backgrounds moving slightly different to the foreground. It's all very, very stylized in as much as it's black and white, and that really emphasizes the kind of dark feeling to this. Now, as you see, my character was just killed by a spider, so that's what happens. Is it feels like a very sort of childlike game, very simple kind of puzzle game, and then suddenly something really brutal and horrific happens, like you get stabbed through the head by a spider, or you're shot through the eye by an arrow. There are some characters in it later that are trying to kill you, and but the rules never never change. It is just a left and right scroller, and it's what you can do within that environment that becomes very interesting, because when you start thinking about the limitations of that, you start thinking, well, what can you get away with? You know, what can you do that makes this very tried and tested format new and appealing? And they absolutely nail it. So they use the environment, you know, to tell the story as much as you're progressing through it, learning, you know, trying to find out where your sister is. You know, you're also engaging with these different creatures that live in this kind of nightmare forest. You know, the black and white tones make everything feel very dark and gothic-like. You know, the fact that the boy doesn't have a name means that there is some connectivity on a personal level to you. You know, is it you? Is it your son? Is it, you know, you as a little boy, as a child? You know, and you know, when you're hit with those kind of limitations of what you can do within this environment, that's when the creative direction of old Aunt Jensen and Jeppy Carlson come in. In this scene here, you can see that they've just taken the idea that actually maybe you get stuck in the web as part of your you know, part of your journey, and you know, the whole point being behind that is that then they can introduce a new mechanic. So basically what happens then is, you know, you get cocooned, and then there's a whole section where you're basically cocooned in this sort of sticky web. Spider's obviously going to come back and eat you later, and yeah, there's a whole part of this section where you're trapped. And you know, that's something that consistently happens in this game, which is the environment does change the way that your character moves within the environment. Maybe you don't want a whole game where you're cocooned, but there's a section in this game that we're looking at where you are, and it changes the limitations of what you can and can't do in terms of problem solving in order to get you through to the next part. And you know, again, later on, spoilers, there are bits where these kind of little creatures attach themselves to you and force you to walk left or right, so you lose one of the mechanics of being able to stop yourself or to jump. Actually, I think you can stop yourself, but you can't jump or decide which direction you're going. So again, that throws you in an interesting sort of little playground where it sort of encourages you to think more creatively and to try and actually solve these various environmental puzzles in a creative way. Now, it won loads of awards. I mean, basically, I mean, it can't have, yeah, they didn't spend a great deal of money on it. They've spent a lot of time on it, but I don't think they spent a great deal of money creating it. But it did generate about, I think it was like nearly $8 million, which is a huge success for Playdead, and basically put them on the map as being you know, one of the kind of most creative kind of indie studios out there. You know, again, like, there's just the horrific way you die in these is part of the charm of it in some sort of sick way. You know, the way that they've kind of taken this fairy tale land and turned it into you know, this most sort of horrific place for you to try and navigate. I think there's something incredibly fun about that, and unnerving as well. And also, the puzzles aren't overly complicated, but they do get progressively harder, where you're having to pull chains to connect water pipes to fill up you know, ravines in order for the log to float, in order for you to jump on the log. And you know, there's just all these little things that sort of change as time goes on, as you learn how to use your character and what his kind of limitations are. You know, they kind of play with that with you constantly, which is what keeps this game alive and fresh. And I think going back to it after a decade, it's as fresh today as it was when it came out 10 years ago. And there aren't many big AAA games that can say that, but this little indie game certainly can say it. And I would absolutely recommend that you give this one a go, because it is a lot of fun to play, and it's just so simplistic. It's only a couple of hours of your time, and it just taxes you in a way that it doesn't feel too punishing. It's not like Dark Souls punishing, where you're redoing sections again and again and again. Although I did, even though I'm playing through it the second time, I had forgotten some of the rules of you know, of what I could and couldn't do, which was relearning certain sections again, which I found really fun and interesting. You know, so I would absolutely recommend that you play this. I think if I had to give it a mark out of 10, I would give it a 9 out of 10, no problem, with Daddy JJ's badass seal of approval, obviously. There is another game in this series that Playdead have worked on, which came out, I believe, in in 2016, and that is that's called Inside, which again uses a lot of similar mechanics to this. It uses a lot of sort of plays with a similar world. There is actually more colour in that, but again it's a 2D side scroller where you have to navigate these different challenges, and yeah, it's just a lot of fun to play, and I would absolutely recommend that you get it. I think it's also on Android as well, so I think you can get this on your phone now, because obviously it's not a very taxing game on whatever system it's being used on. So I would say if you get the opportunity to do it, it wouldn't even surprise me if you could get it for free on the PC now, because it's one of those games that's been around for quite a long time, and and it's been critically acclaimed, and it's been doing really well. And to come back to it after all this time, I enjoyed it as much this time as the first time I played it. So yeah, I've said it before, I'll say it again, you must try this. It's an absolute must play and must buy. Get your hands on it at some point. It'll only take a couple of hours of your time, and it's just really nice visual storytelling, a really sort of artistic style that really fits with the the whole kind of theme and concept of this little boy navigating a sort of heinous terrain, if you like. And yeah, I did really enjoy it, so yeah, I hope you do too. So with that, I will say be good, stay safe, and be kind to one another. Cheers.